Chicago, the Windy City, the city that works. Chicago has a long history of innovation. The world's first skyscraper was built here in 1885. It's the birthplace of jazz. The atom was first split at the University of Chicago. No other city has the technology to change the color of its river to green. And it's the home of my favorite innovation, Chicago Deep Dish Stuffed Pizza. I'm here in downtown Chicago, where I was able to meet with the nation's leaders in the areas of alcohol regulation and innovation within the alcoholic beverage industry.
What stifles innovation?
What stifles innovation? It's actually a really good question, I think, and I might suggest that innovation isn't really being stifled at all, but rather it's alive and well and it's happening every day around us in all three tiers of the industry. But what I do think is probably being stifled is the application of the innovation, and I don't think it's so much the regulators and the legislators.
If regulators and legislators don't stifle innovation, where's the breakdown?
I think if you dig even a little bit deeper, you find that really it kind of all gets down to the root of the various layers of self-interest that exist because of the three-tier system. It's very difficult to bring to life a new innovation that's going to meet the needs and the wants of the small distributors and the big distributors.
Who stifles innovation more, regulators or legislators?
What a great question. Well, since for the most part regulators receive their allowance from legislators, it ain't their fault. Many laws are passed, then something new comes along that the law in place has not accounted for.
Mr. Pisano, do you believe the regulation stifles innovation?
Objectively, according to the Nielsen Company, there's more consumer choice in alcohol than any other consumer product. More than cosmetics, more than frozen foods. So the state-based system of alcohol regulation is not stifling innovation.
What you're describing is innovation of the product. What about innovation within the alcoholic beverage industry?
The way alcohol is sold is obviously different today than it was 20 years ago and what it was 80 years ago. And it's going to be different 20 years from now because the state-based system allows innovation and allows changes.
Who stifles innovation more, regulators or legislators?
I don't think it's fair to point fingers at anyone, quite frankly. I think everyone has a part to play in stifling innovation, and I'm not even sure it's appropriate to call it stifling innovation.
Do you believe alcohol regulations are unnecessarily restrictive?
The regulation of alcohol is strict. It sets a framework within which alcohol can be manufactured, distributed, and sold to consumers. And whenever someone challenges that framework, then they complain that their innovation is being stifled. Certainly the legislature establishes public policy, and it's within the framework of that public policy that regulators regulate. So we implement and enforce the laws as written. But industry itself has a part to play. Innovation should not be allowed simply for the sake of innovation, because not all innovation is a good thing when it comes to alcohol. Take, for example, powdered alcohol. Current debate across the country with alcohol. It's being banned. Well, that's certainly the legislature's prerogative, but that could be seen as stifling innovation. Same thing a few years ago with alcohol without liquid, AWOL devices, caffeine and alcohol. Those were all banned for good reason, but that's stifling innovation. So I think the industry, legislatures, and regulators all have a part to play in this, but I don't think anyone's really trying to stifle or prevent innovation.
How has the alcoholic beverage industry changed in the last 5 or so years?
The alcohol beverage industry has been reshaping itself over the last 5 or more years to keep up with and satisfy consumer trends. These trends drive growth. As a result, we have seen many changes over the past few years. For example, direct shipping of wine to consumers, craft brewers, growlers, flavored spirits, and flavored malt beverage products. In the past, brand awareness was mostly through ads. Now businesses want to interact and engage the consumers through numerous social media channels. Sometimes these new ways for innovation can be stifled, not so much by the regulators, but by the legislature that enacted these laws, as these laws have not kept up with the ever-changing environment. Some of these laws are obstacles. They are antiquated and out of date.
Can you provide an example?
One example in New York is the law that prohibits a liquor store from selling beer, forcing the consumer to visit 2 separate licensees to obtain wine and spirits, and then beer. To remove these obstacles, the laws need to be updated. The NCSLA could be a champion of these changes by offering inputs such as, what is the nature of this law and regulation, and how do we interpret it to fit in with the current climate?
Mr. Rudd, I would like to ask you whether you believe regulation stifles innovation.
I do not find that regulation necessarily stifles innovation. Rather, laws and regulations are simply slower to change with innovation, kind of like turning a ship. With technology rapidly changing our society, governments are slower to adapt. That, however, can be a good thing as it allows the lawmakers and regulators to get it right.
So who does stifle innovation? But before you answer, can you change your shirt and go outside?
Well, I would say it falls more on legislators than regulators to encourage innovation. In other words, those that pass the laws stifle innovation more than those that enforce the laws.
Mr. Tomaszewski, do regulators stifle innovation?
I'm going to throw a bone to the regulators. I don't think they stifle regulation. I think that the legislators do, and special interests. The hardest time I've had is to overcome special interests who don't want to see change. As we all know, the regulators can only interpret the laws that they see.
What is your opinion on the legislative climate for alcohol regulation?
Seriously?
You have no opinion?
No.
Mr. Burt, can you provide an example of an outdated law in Oklahoma?
A good example in our state is the infusion of drinks, putting fruit in the bottle. Is that refilling? All legitimate questions. Look for solutions. Perhaps doing a declaratory ruling while the legislature ponders its options.
Mr. Greenspan, can you provide an example of a law you would like to see changed?
One of the outdated laws that I would like to see changed is the requirement that individual sales representatives have permits or agents' licenses in certain states. This is extremely burdensome to us because we have many employees and there's a lot of turnover. We have employees who are joining us, who are leaving us, who are being transferred, and keeping track of who needs a permit, whose permit should be canceled, and whose permit should be transferred is very time-consuming and expensive. I suspect it's equally expensive and time-consuming for the agencies involved as well, and I don't think it adds anything to the law enforcement or control of the industry. And to the extent that there was any revenue lost by the agencies, it's something that could be replaced by a different type of fee. For example, a fee for every sales representative that a wholesaler employed on December 31st of each year.
Can you provide an example where legislative intent does not keep pace with industry innovation?
Michigan law says that most licenses cannot be located within 500 feet of a church or a school. There is a vaguely worded exception to that, although just what it applies to is not clear. The rule, however, gives the Michigan Commission a magic wand. It allows the Commission to waive that statutory provision. I could use a few more rules like that, but can a rule really provide authority to waive a statute? The Michigan Court of Appeals has a case before it right now involving this issue and this rule. Leave has been granted and briefs have been filed, and sooner or later the court will issue an opinion. In the meantime, since the Commission has not been enjoined from using its magic wand, the Commission will continue to use the rule to waive the statute to grant licenses to otherwise qualified applicants.
What problems does that lead to?
I've already mentioned that Michigan's distance requirement is 500 feet, although other states use different numbers. Whether it's 600 feet, 300 feet, or 200 feet, are some states doing a better job than others in protecting interests? Does the distance requirement matter at all? Should the focus be on impact? If the number does matter, what is the magic number?
How can NCSLA foster innovation?
One of the ways that NCSLA can help to champion innovation is by creating mini panels, 15 or 20 minute segments in a best practices or case study type format that allows the regulator and their agency and or vendor, if they chose to outsource the solution, to get up on stage and do an A to Z presentation of what the problem was, how they resolved it, the implementation phase, and where they are today. I think this will really give the other regulators an opportunity to fully wrap their arms around the concept and determine if it's an innovation that they can use in their own agencies as well.
Mr. Pisano, how can NCSLA be a champion of change?
Well, I think NCSLA has proven it is a champion of change throughout its history. Recall back in 1935, NCSLA was created. They got together, kicked industry out of the room, and in that room, the regulators across the country determined the alcohol system that's worked so well for so many. We have the most robust alcohol industry in the world. That's something to be celebrated, but we're also a regulated industry. Again, because of the work of NCSLA back in 1935. So to be a champion of change, I would encourage NCSLA to return to its roots. Return to leading regulator first, coming up with best practices and ideas to solve the problems raised by alcohol regulation. And by then we can move to its historical roots and celebrate a great success of our great system.
How can this organization foster innovation?
In my opinion, NCSLA is a champion for change, bringing together stakeholders to bring together their ideas and their innovations. There is no such thing as a stupid question, and where you don't have to be afraid. And where you don't have to be afraid to express your thoughts.
Regulatory agencies are stuck in statutes that often do not adequately respond to new products, services, hidden tiers, and delivery methods. Innovation is difficult. Reaching consensus is even more difficult. Consensus on what innovation is appropriate, consensus between regulators in the industry, and consensus in the industry itself among the three tiers. NCSLA is the best venue to discuss these topics in depth. Perhaps because NCSLA encourages this discussion and provides a safe venue to do so. This is David Brandon, reporting from downtown Chicago, sharing